Hola, mis cariños. I'd like to go over the test with you folks. Let me go ahead and pull that up really quick. So, the very first section of the test says translate the words you hear me say. I may do away with this particular section of the exam just because I may or may not be to school on Friday. It just sort of depends. The next section of the test says traduce las siguientes frases, which means translate the following sentences. So you'll notice the very first sentence says, I am talking with the goat. That's been a pretty popular sentence in our studies. So what it should say you should say, estoy hablando con la cabra. The deal with that is I've underlined and I've bolded sections I really want you to pay attention to. So obviously I'm using the estar, the gerund formula there. So estar más el verbo with ando, oyendo. And just remember that if it's an AR verb, it ends in ando. And if it's an ER verb or an IR verb, it ends in yendo, I-E-N-D-O. So in this case, hablar is an AR verb. So estoy hablando con la cabra. The next question, or I guess sentence, says, you are walking with the cow. And you will notice that I've underlined once again and bolded are and walking. So the answer to that one is, estás caminando con la vaca. And I'm using definite articles here, you guys. We're not an una, nothing like that. It's el, la that we're using here because they're definite articles. When I want you to use an indefinite article, pay attention because I will bold and underline the article, and you'll notice later on I've done that. So the next question, the next question is one must has to study. So you guys will remember the expression that we learned for that is hay, H-A-Y. So this one's pretty easy. Hay que estudiar. It's just that hay que más el verbo. Hay que estudiar. So you don't have to conjugate the verb. You don't have to do anything special with it. It's just hay que estudiar. And that's just a general one must study. Número 7 dice, there is a cat on the table. So you guys will want to remember some of that outside vocabulary that we've learned. Table is definitely one of those outside vocabulary words. La mesa. So you'll remember there are is always hay. So hay un gato en la mesa. And you guys will remember in means in or on. And in this case, we're using it as on. So hay un gato en la mesa is the answer. The next one says, you all are doing your homework in a home, which is kind of an awkward phrase, but I did want to work in that indefinite article for you guys. Once again, just really pay attention. I've bolded and underlined what I want you to pay attention to, which is the fact that we are using an indefinite article here. So y'all are doing the homework in a home. Should be vosotros estáis haciendo la tarea en una casa. Número 9 dice, they are eating in a restaurant. So again, we've got that gerund, and I've also bolded and underlined the indefinite article a. So just to kind of clue you in that that's un restaurante, not el restaurante. So they are eating in a restaurant should be ellos están comiendo en un restaurante. That's what you should have. So ellos están, perdóname, ellos están comiendo en un restaurante. And I tried to be pretty sensitive about the way I listed the prepositions in there. So if you're doing something with somebody, it's con, right? If it's in or on, it's in. Just pay attention to what preposition I'm using on this. Again, I tried to be pretty straightforward with everything, so just pay attention pretty closely to the words. The next section is pretty straightforward. It's just a simple verb conjugation section. So the very first thing we see is Salina, and then it says decir muchas cosas. So we're conjugating decir for Salina. That's third person singular. Okay, that's the same as saying ella, él, usted. Salina is conjugated for third person singular. So it should say Salina dice muchas cosas. The next question, número 11, says tú and then ir al baño. Tú, you guys know, that's second person. And remember that ir is a super irregular verb, probably one of the more irregular verbs out there. So tú vas al baño, and that's V-A-S. Tú vas al baño. The next one, nosotros, and then it says hacer la tarea. So you guys, hacer is actually pretty straightforward once it gets past yo. So no real tricks here. It's just nosotros hacemos la tarea. So as long as you guys remember just normal conjugations for AR, ER, and IR verbs, you should be in good shape with all of this. So just to let you know that hacer is, like I said, pretty regular once it gets past yo, which is hago, as you guys know. And then the other thing too, just to remember, is that with nosotros and vosotros, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, verbs seem to be pretty regular with nosotros and vosotros. So the next one, speaking of vosotros, the next one is a vosotros. And it says, vosotros saber la información. So vosotros saber, you guys, you conjugate saber, it should be sabéis. That's S-A-B-E with an accent over it. Don't forget the accent. Remember, I grade down for misspellings and missed accents. So S-A-B-E with an accent over it, I-S. La información. So vosotros sabéis la información is the answer. And the next one is yo, and then tener is the verb, and then hambre. And you guys will remember that this is a pretty common expression. If you're hungry, you have hunger. So yo tengo hambre. And that one is pretty irregular. You're just going to have to memorize it. A lot of these irregular verbs seem to go to G for some reason. I don't have a good explanation for that, but just remember it's yo tengo hambre. Aside from the test, you'll just want to remember that. It's a pretty handy phrase to know. So the next one is escribe la letra de la palabra española que corresponde con la de inglés. So write the letter of the Spanish word that corresponds with its English equivalent. That's going to be on the test. On your guys' pre-test, what I've done is I'm actually listing out many, many animals, and I just want you guys to translate them. So just translate the animals. You know that my pre-tests are always much more difficult than the actual test. So I'm sure you probably have figured it out by now that a lot of times when I have you list mass definitions, a lot of times those sections on tests become multiple choice. So multiple choice or match, and in this case it's going to be match. So just remember the animals. Giraffe should be la jirafa. I'd really like you guys to use the articles on this just for your own practice. So do work on using the article. Snake, I'll accept two things, la culebra or la serpiente. Be sure that you're spelling these correctly. You guys have these in your notes. You have all of these words in your notes. So be sure that you're spelling it correctly. 17 es unicornio, the unicorn, el unicornio. 18 should be el caballo, el caballo. 19 should be el koala. That's a masculine. It ends in an A, but it's masculine. There are a few of those. El koala. That one should be easy for you because it's the same. Fish. I really want you guys to use el pez. Here I'm kind of talking about a live fish, though if you were to use el pescado, that wouldn't be incorrect. That just remember, el pescado is not fish that you see swimming around in a pond. Those are fish that you eat. It's what you would see on a menu. So 21 dice eagle. Eagle is el águila. So remember that it's masculine. Again, that's one of those that ends in an A, but it's still masculine. And it has an accent over the first A. So águila, remember when I kind of pronounce it and I put the emphasis on a certain vowel, there's going to be an accent that sits on that vowel. And águila, I'm putting the accent on that first A, so it has an accent over the first A. 22, monkey. Also ape is what we have in our notes. The word is fairly interchangeable. El mono is how you say that. El mono. 23 dice bird, which is el pájaro. And then remember, pájaro has an accent over the first A. Pájaro. So remember that. 24 is el caimán, alligator. El caimán, which has an accent over the last A. 25 says pig. This is again one of those where there are two different answers that work just fine. I usually say el puerco. El cerdo está bien también. Puedes usar los dos. So el cerdo o el puerco. And you'll hear me say el puerco. Zebra, you guys, is almost identical. Think about how they do the number 0, where we say 0 with a Z. They spell it with a C. Zebra is the same way. It's actually C-E-B-R-A. Zebra. This is one of those where my crazy Castilian accent isn't going to help you out because guess what? I pronounce C's and Z's with a TH sound. Unless the C, of course, is a hard C sound. So this is what you can expect to see on your test and on the pre-test. This is really what I want you guys to focus on. I'll have your substitute. If I'm not there on Friday, I will have your substitute replay this for you before your test, just for your guys' review. But just like I said, remember some of the formulas that we learned with estar. Remember that, I can mean that you have to do something or that there is something. So there are two different uses there. It looks like, though, there's a lot with estar on there in gerunds. And we have focused on that a lot. So do definitely study gerunds. That's going to be like 4 points of your test right there. On the speaking part, I'll sort of like need to burn that bridge, I think, when I get there. What I may have the teacher do is say the word in English. So say, for example, she says sheep. You'll want to write, well, she'll say the sheep, and you'll want to write la oveja. She might say, I don't know, the squirrel, and you'll want to put la ardilla, right? Be sure to check for spelling. Ardilla has the 2 L's in it, right? And then, maybe she'll say, I don't know, the dog, and you'll need to write el perro. And remember, anytime you hear that rolled R in the middle of a word, it means that there are 2 R's there. So perro is P-E-R-R-O. And then again, you're definitely going to want to remember the articles. El perro está bien. Un perro está bien also. So you can use either indefinite or a definite article. Either way would work for me. I just want you to use an article. And just to repeat myself, she would just say it in English and you would need to translate it. So you might want to remember the sheep. You might want to remember how to say the squirrel. And you may also want to remember how to say the dog. That would be my suggestion to you in terms of the translate the words you hear me say section. Anyway, over and out. I hope you guys are doing well. I miss you all terribly. And I hope to see you very, very soon. Goodbye.